Hey there, welcome back to another review, this time of the 2015 drama True Story. Now, this is a film that I was really curious about because I remember seeing the trailers a while back, or the trailer, I think there's just only one trailer really, and I thought it looked interesting. And mainly I was curious about it because it stars Jonah Hill and James Franco in a serious drama. This is not a film where they're being jokey, they're being comedic. This isn't a joke. They're playing serious roles, and Jonah Hill has already proven that he can do that in films like Moneyball and so forth. James Franco started his career doing more serious roles. So it's not like they've never done this before, but it's the first time that these two have been in a film together playing these type of roles. And I thought they did an amazing job. I thought they were really good, actually. I thought they delivered their best acting performances to date in this film. I thought the chemistry between the two was superb. It was really good. And for the most part, because the director didn't have to manufacture it or build it because it was already there. Because Jonah Hill and James Franco are really good friends in real life. So he didn't have to create or structure or build or just end up creating chemistry, which is kind of a hard thing to do for films. It didn't have to do that with this movie. It's based on a true story, and it's really a lot of dialogue. It's very dialogue heavy, but I still was very captivated by this film. It kept my interest throughout. And I would say it's one of my favorite films of the year. It's a film that really didn't do that well in the box office. It wasn't really released in that many theaters anyway. And critically, like on Rotten Tomatoes, it gets lower than a 50%, which I absolutely do not agree with. As some people were thinking, oh, it's not unique enough, it's not thrilling enough, and I'm like, it's based on a true story, and it pretty much follows the story almost to a T. And to me, that's as thrilling as it can get. It's based on a true story. This actually happened. I don't what were you expecting them to do? Like go M Night Shyamalan at the end or something? I really it's like people there was not enough twists and turns. There's not going to be twists and turns because this is based on a true story. Like what are you going to expect them to go Oliver Stone on this crap? No. I'm glad they stuck to the story and it's called True Story. If the movie was called True Story and it completely just disregarded the true story, I think that would be a problem. But that's just me. Anyway, the film is directed by Rupert Goold, or that's I don't know if that's how you say his last name or not. Rupert Goold. It's based on a screenplay by David Kajanich and Rupert Goold. It's based on the book True Story by Michael Finkel. It features music by Marco Beltrami, which I thought he actually did a really good job with the score. Cinematography by Masanobu Takanyagi, which he did a spectacular job with the cinematography in this film. It opens up with a really stunning, darkly beautiful opening sequence where you see a teddy bear fall in slow motion from the sky, and then you see what looks like a little girl in what you think is a bed, but then you find out it's a suitcase, and then you find out she's dead, and then the suitcase gets zipped up and closed, and then the next shot, the suitcase gets zipped up and closed, and next shot shows the suitcase being dropped into a river, and then after that, the next shot is just coroner unzipping the suitcase, and you're like, wow, that's a hell of a way to start your movie. That's the opening of the film. Automatically, I am engaged by the film and just like, wow, what the hell? Like, that's pretty brutal. Pretty brutal way to open your film, but it works. And then you get introduced to our main character, Michael Finkel, played by Jonah Hill, who is a New York Times reporter, and he ends up coming under fire for this story that he basically lied about a lot of the things in it. It was getting a lot of acclaim until people involved figured out that he was bullshitting and he got let go from the New York Times. So now he's going back to his home in Montana, and where there's and back with his wife, played by Felicity Jones, and he's having a hard time dealing with getting any other jobs because he's pretty much been, that's it, banned. You know, you got fired from the New York Times, and now everyone's questioning his journalistic integrity, and no one wants to give him a chance. I guess when it comes to journalism, you make a mistake, and that's it. You have to be perfect, otherwise you're going to get screwed. But what he did do was not necessarily the right thing anyway. He did fabricate a story that didn't exist, because instead of focusing on this story of multiple people getting abused by yeah, he got the story was featured on the cover of the New York Times Magazine, and it dealt with some touchy subject. I think it was somewhere in either South Africa or somewhere in Africa, where these young men are abused, and he decided, because the people that were hiring the New York Times, they were pressuring him to write the story, and they were telling him, get the story done, and we want it about one person. We don't want it about multiple people, which I don't get that. I don't understand why it's not as interesting or as engaging to people reading an article if it's more than one person getting beaten and abused. I don't get why I don't get why it's just one person getting all of this abuse is more engaging than more than one person getting this type of abuse. To me, that's more shocking. To me, that's definitely something that gets me wants me to help in any way that I can. I don't get how it's just one person is what makes you decide that, all right, I'm going to try to help for the cause. But anyway, he does what they ask him to do. Kind of definitely fabricates some stuff. Says that this one young man was beaten and abused, and he's the one that had all of his scars, when in reality it's multiple people. So he gets fired by the New York Times because he did what they asked him to do, and he even told them, like, this is what I got, and there's multiple people who are getting abused, and he wanted to go for that angle, but like, that's not interesting enough. So they fire him because they don't want to take the blame, and they don't want to take part of the blame for pressuring him to write a story about one person, and refusing to use the facts that were there. So in order for him to appease his boss, he came up with the story. And it's probably not the first time that something like this has happened. So in a lot of ways, you feel for Jonah Hill's character in this, because he's just doing his job. Yes, he did lie, he did fabricate some things, but he's not the one that had that original concept in mind in the first place. He just decided to do it because he wanted to keep his job, and he wanted to keep getting these he wanted to get the head article on the New York Times, and he wanted to get the cover piece, and he got the cover piece, but then, you know, after the cover piece was revealed that it wasn't real, it was fabricated, then he got let go. And just when he thinks he's not going to have any work, he gets a opportunity, a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, in this really strange scenario where a killer named Christian Luongo, played by James Franco, is assuming his identity. For some reason, Christian Luongo is claiming to be New York Times reporter Michael Finkel. And he gets this information from an Oregonian reporter, who is another interesting bit of casting, because usually this type of actor, he doesn't normally get casted in this type of stuff. And I'm looking up his name right now because I want to make sure I mention him, because I thought he did a good job with his role. Because this actor is normally a guy you see play a lot of sort of dumb roles, like he plays a dumb guy or something. Ethan Suplee. This is an actor who was in My Name is Earl. He was that character in My Name is Earl. That was what he was. A lot of people remember him as Randy Hickey in My Name is Earl. So he was known as that kind of guy. And here he's playing a serious character, which was nice to see. I thought Ethan Suplee did a really good job with it. You also have Robert John Burke in this film in a brief little role. Robert John Burke, yes, RoboCop from RoboCop 3. I think he plays a police detective in this. He actually does a pretty good job, a lot better than his acting job in RoboCop 3 or in Thinner. Seems like he's definitely evolved as an actor and gotten a lot better as the years have gone by. But anyway, what happens is this Oregon reporter, played by Ethan Suplee, contacts Jonah Hill, tells him about the story, and Jonah Hill decides for himself to set up a meeting with Christian Luongo and see what's going on. Why are you taking my name? And then maybe write an article about it. And ultimately what happens is through his relationship with Christian Luongo, James Franco, ends up providing these letters he's been writing. These letters are really demented and strange, and they have a connection to a lot of the same way that the Jonah Hill's character that Finkel writes, where he writes a lot of letters that have like pictures in them, and Christian Luongo does the same thing. And then Christian Luongo admits that I really like your work, I love your work, and I want you to, I will give you exclusive rights to my story if you give me writing lessons. And so that's what happens. They exchange writing lessons, and Christian Luongo, James Franco, gives Jonah Hill's character, Michael Finkel, his letters, and it becomes an obsession. And pretty much what happens is the film then delves into the amount of manipulation that Christian Luongo ends up putting Michael Finkel through. He puts him through. He sucks you in, and you fall for it as a viewer. You are manipulated by Christian Luongo and his story and his tale and all of this, and you are being manipulated by a killer. And I thought that was a really chilling aspect of the film. And I really love the direction and the cinematography of this film. This also added to the atmosphere and the mood of the film as well. It's very isolated and very cold. And I really love this shot where you have Jonah Hill's character, Michael Finkel, is looking through the letters, and it's edited in a way where he's reading through the letters, and you hear through this different, really excellent sound editing here, where you hear James Franco's voice reading the letters in one channel, and then you hear it in another channel, and then ultimately it leads up to a great shot where it pans out, and you see that Jonah Hill has put together like a puzzle, like a picture puzzle from these letters of this just demented-looking, sad woman like yelling. And then you have like in her eyes or hands that are grasping out, and it really is messed up, and it definitely I thought it gave me chills, because I was like, this is pretty disturbing, and it really did give me sort of a little peek into the sort of the psychosis that James Franco's character is going through. And then the rest of the film just keeps going, chugging along, and Jonah Hill's, there's too much stuff with the letters to do an article, so he decides to write a book. So he decides to write this book based on the letters that are being written by James Franco's character, Christian Luongo. And then he gets exclusive $250,000 advance from HarperCollins, and then it deals with this sort of controversy of why, why are you telling this story? This is a story of a killer. And of course, there's doubt whether or not he did it or not. But then he surprisingly admits, Christian Luongo surprisingly admits to 2 murders. He admits to killing his wife and to killing one of his daughters, but he doesn't admit to killing his son. And so you're all like, huh, that's strange. Okay, he admits to killing all these killers, but doesn't admit to the other ones. And then it leads into the trial. And of course, before the trial, Jonah Hill meets up with Robert John Burke. Robert John Burke's trying to pressure him to give him all the information because it could help the case. Because Christian Longo's trying to create a mistrial by confusing people. And then it leads to a very powerful courtroom sequence where Christian Luongo tells his tale, tells his story of what actually happened. And it's a total bunch of bullshit. And the evidence, the circumstantial evidence, nails him to the fucking wall. And the jury convicts him guilty. And then before he leaves the courtroom, he just looks at Michael Finkel and he winks at him. And even during the story he's coming up with, he's using all these terms that Finkel had actually told him about. He'd been using him. They were becoming friends, and he was using him like a wad of used toilet paper. And it was just, it all unraveled at that moment. And I thought Jonah Hill's performance was really solid there while he's sitting in the courtroom, while he's stunned. He can't believe he had been used. And so, you're in the audience, you can't believe you've been used like this as well by this scumbag. And James Franco was great casting because he's a very charismatic person. He's a very charismatic killer as well in this. And so then you have a really good scene I like, which I think is definitely before the book is published. Jonah Hill has one last visit with Christian Luongo. And I thought it was a good performance by Jonah Hill here, where he pretty much says that you're full of shit and all this is bullshit. And I really like that. It's like, oh yeah, by the way, I'm talking to the police and I'm letting them know all of your bullshit stories you're going to come up with, your bullshit excuses, none of it's going to fly. You're going to stay in here, I can't believe you fucking used me. It was just some really good, fuck you. It was a really good moment where Jonah Hill's character actually built some balls, so to speak, and told off Christian Luongo. And then there's an interesting scene at the end where, at the book reading, where Michael Finkel's finished reading a little bit of his book, True Story, to audiences at Powell's, and which I've actually been to multiple times. Powell's in downtown Portland, Oregon, and Christian Luongo was an Oregonian, so that was another thing that kind of connected with me because I've lived most of my life. I grew up in Oregon. Most of my life, I was living in Oregon. So, and I don't remember ever hearing about the Christian Luongo story and what he did. And that's just thinking about it, like him just trying to manipulate the jury into believing that his wife just went crazy and went in and like killed one of his kids, and then he ended up killing his youngest daughter because he wanted to put her out of misery or something. It's just really chilling to watch James Franco's character just say this stuff and just lie to everyone and just put the blame of these killings, these brutal murders, where he's just strangling his kids. It puts one, and it's just the strangeness of he didn't think that his younger daughter would be comfortable in this suitcase, so he decides to give her little teddy bear. It's just this demented, just crazy shit that just really just is shocking. And then, like I was saying about this, going back to this interesting sort of thing at the end, where he's reading the book, there's a scene where you have this line of dialogue where you have Michael Finkel starts talking about things, and I think he says something like, I don't remember exactly what he said, but I was actually pretty poignant. And he's like, I learned a lot about myself, and a lot about Christian. And we learned that we're somewhat alike in some ways, and that scared me. And then you pan out and you see someone asking the question in the crowd, and it's James Franco, which I was like, and then James Franco pretty much tells him, what's it like knowing that you will always be known as the guy who wrote a best-selling book about a killer, and how much of this is really you, and so forth and so on. This soul sort of, you know, that this connection is always going to be there, and so on. It was this kind of this mind fuck at the end, which I kind of shook my head at, like, I don't really get it. And then you have this really interesting bit of information about the actual case, where you find out that Michael Finkel never wrote anything again, never wrote a book, never wrote another article. But Christian Luongo from Death Row, he published multiple articles, including articles at the New York Times. I thought that was really a bit of sad, tragic irony, where the New York Times, there's so much integrity, they fired Michael Finkel for having a little bit too, you know, fabricating something in a story, but they're willing to post and publish stories from a murderer on death row. I just thought that was definitely really, really interesting and kind of sick. And it was true. So that was something that really, another thing that really took me aback. I was like, whoa, like that's pretty crazy. That's pretty crazy. Um, but yeah, that's true story. It doesn't sound like much, but trust me, if you're a fan of true crime films, you like dramas, if it sounds interesting to you to see these two actors try to play off serious roles, to perform serious performances, then I do recommend this film. It's not a film for everybody, because this isn't the type of movie that it has some pretty heavy sort of subject material. But not everybody enjoys this type of stuff. But I thought it was very engaging. I thought it was riveting. I couldn't take my eyes off the screen. They were glued to the screen for majority of the movie. I love the way it looked. I love the cinematography. The direction I thought was great. The editing was top notch. The score was good. The performances were all solid. All in all, I really, really liked this film. And I really don't know what I really found personally wrong with it. It's not going to have action, because that's not the type of movie it is. It's not really a thriller. I think some critics might have misunderstood that. It's a drama based on a true crime story. It's not a thriller. So if you're expecting that, you're probably going to be disappointed. It's in a lot of ways it's a two-man show. It's a show between two stars, Jonah Hill and James Franco. And I think they deliver powerhouse performances that are the best of their careers to date. But anyway, I really don't know what to say about the film, other than if it's a rate out of 5 stars. I'd probably give it 4.5 out of 5, not a total 5-star rating, because there was a little bit of pacing here and there, and it's a little bit of pacing problems here and there, and I honestly don't really care for the ending, which is like, Jonah Hill's crazy. He's seeing James Franco everywhere now. I didn't really care for that. I know they're trying to go for it like a mind fuck or something, or you know, they'll always be together. There'll always be that connection. I get it, but there was a different way they could have approached that, because it just felt like, I don't know, it was just unnecessary. But other than that, I really liked this movie. I really liked it. So anyway, thank you for watching my review of True Story, and I will see you guys later. See ya.